folks, it's been a technical difficulty kind of day. As you can see, we're both laughing already because it's been one of those days. But welcome back to the Runge Turners podcast, the show that's about improving the life, well-being, and productivity of mechanics everywhere. I am your host, Joshua Taylor, the founder of WrenchTurners.online. And on today's episode, we have a very special guest. It is Madison Wheeler. Now, there is a interesting leapfrog story that goes along with Madison, and I'm looking forward to her sharing that with you all. Not to mention that we get to have our third female mechanic on the show, which is super awesome because it's incredibly hard to find you because like 96.5% of mechanics are men. So this like finding unicorns out in the wild. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Madison, thank you very much for taking the time and getting through the absolute wonderfulness that is technology to try and be here this evening.
Can't live without it, but can't live with it.
Yeah, my statement was things, techie things that aren't techieing are the definition of stress. So we've gotten through that. So now that we're here, let's kick off this with our first question. Like, what's the one thing that got you into automotive industry? What got you into being a mechanic?
It's funny because I have no one in my family that is mechanical at all. Like, my dad comes to me, he's like, help me. But honestly, it was growing up in a small town, like a small town Cochrane. Went to Cochrane High, and there was maybe like 200 kids in the school. Most of them all came out from Cremona or wherever, all drove trucks that were handed down from grandpa, right? So they're all classics at this point. And that's honestly probably what got me hooked, was trucks. I was like, I like these trucks, like pretty cool, pretty fun to drive, put big tires, big wheels, you know? But yeah, like I didn't want to be a mechanic for a very long time. I actually wanted to open my own bar, like worked in the bar industries for 8-9 years, and then had a big dream to open my own bar. And then it just kind of like, didn't want to live the server lifestyle, you know, like late nights all the time. And, you know, it wasn't a normal routine. So I was kind of thinking, you know, I got to do something that's still normal Monday, Friday, you know, living life kind of thing. But I'm not a desk person. There's no way I could sit at a desk and sit there and all day and do nothing.
That should be something that's identified as somebody who wants to open a bar. You want to be kind of your own boss to some degree, but you are definitely outside of the normal.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, once I realized I didn't want to work till 5 a.m. all the time, I was like, what's something else I can do? And I actually started heavy duty first. Worked at a waste management company, apprenticing on like hydrovacs and tanker trucks.
Okay.
Loved it, but man, I was sore. And some of those wrenches I'm holding are like the size of my forearm, you know? So it's like, like how long can I do this for? So eventually it was like, well, you know, I like heavy duty. I liked working on those massive trucks. So then just shrink that down a little bit.
A little bit. Scale the corner down just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So you're working on a heavy truck. So did you end up with like, is the first experience in automotive at a dealership, or was it?
It was, yes. So I actually took pre-employment for my first year because I was a little bit nervous about finding a job, being a female in the trade and having no experience whatsoever in automotive. So I was kind of thinking, you know, looked into pre-employment, and they actually place you into a dealership within your like second or third week of school. So I got placed at Cochrane Toyota, and then I got hired on there once I was finished school.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So did you find that the schooling, the pre-employment, the schooling was very beneficial, partially beneficial, or was it more beneficial from the fact that they like almost immediately placed you in a facility?
Yeah, like I would say the only beneficial part of that was that I had a job the day after school was done. But you learn the exact same thing. It's just 3 weeks more extended. So you're learning it at a slower pace. And some of it was like, it's like, what's this? Like a screwdriver, you know? And it's just like, it was very like basic, but it was almost okay. Cause there were some kids in there who had no idea what a screwdriver was. So, you know, if you're starting from green, then perfect.
Yeah. Some of that stuff is really, really weird because I don't remember my first. Now I only remember bits and bobs because it was a long time ago from my first year, automotive apprenticeship. But a year and a half ago, I did the year one motorcycle training at college, and part of the course, or part of the first course, was literally identifying tools. We're
Yeah.
talking identify the difference between a number one and a number three star screwdriver,
Yeah.
and the fact that there's multiple different ways. It's just some of the stuff just make like head tilt. Like
Yeah.
what?
You're like, ooh,
What?
should you be doing this if you don't know what that is?
Yeah, right, right. But I guess it's from a liability standpoint. They want to make sure that somebody somewhere has taught this
Yeah.
person that this is the screwdriver and this
Yeah.
is the wedge and this is the you know what
A
I mean? Like so,
hammer.
right. So the quality of the individual, if they can't pass courses like that, is a great way to weed out some of the
Yeah,
folks that
true.
can't be in our trade. So your first dealership was at a Toyota store. So what
Yes.
was that first year like?
Um, it wasn't a lot of mechanical, to be honest. It was a lot of cleaning up and
Mm-hmm.
putting out the journeyman, and like I'd put on a tire here and there, or a couple lug nuts here and there. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a busy shop. Like they had 16 techs, and it was like the most profitable Toyota in Canada at that time. So obviously, as a first year apprentice with very little experience, they're not going to be like, here, touch all these cars and put our name in the sand. So they started me off
Yeah.
very green, and it was kind of nice. Like I worked underneath another apprentice. He was a second year, and he like without him, I probably wouldn't have stayed at the trade. He was awesome. He,
Mm.
he's just one of those guys who took his time, and even if he was getting in shit for taking extra time, he's like, I don't care. So it was really nice. But other than that, like it wasn't a very hands-on experience to learn first year for sure.
No, it was a lot of getting coffee or doing the shuttle or
Yeah,
cleaning out drains or
yeah,
taking out
wet
the garbage or
balls.
whatever. Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Been there, did that. So once you got through that, did you stay at the Toyota store for a long period of time and really grow through Toyota or?
I did not actually. Unfortunately, COVID happened at the same time, basically as my first year ended. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'd registered to go for school second year, and that was the point when everything was shutting down. It was like
Mm-hmm.
no school, everything's online. Basically, half our techs got laid off because we had no one coming in anymore because there was no one driving, and so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would say like for the first like 8 months, I was laid off for 8 months from Toyota during the pandemic, and then they offered me the job back, but I had a different job offer at a Nissan dealership that had just opened.
Mm-hmm.
And the foreman that was at Toyota was now at Nissan. So I was like, well, I'm gonna follow my foreman, I think, because I really liked him. He was awesome. So yeah, then started at Nissan right after that.
Is that Richard?
No, that was Steve Lee.
Steve Lee.
Yes.
So where along the way? Now this is trying to make that leapfrog and to tie you and how I know to need to reach out to you is where did you meet Richard Mueller?
So he was the foreman at Nissan. So my foreman from Toyota was just like the basically underneath Richard.
Oh, I see.
He
Okay,
didn't want
cool.
the responsibilities of the foreman anymore, but he still wanted to, work in the shop, be very hands-on, and help the apprentices out. So yeah,
Gotcha.
sorry, Richard was my foreman when I started at Nissan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's okay. So you've had a bit of time working on heavy duty.
Mhm.
You've got basically a full year of pushing brooms, and now the pandemic has ended, and you're now back in a shop at a Nissan store.
Yes.
That's probably not as big as a Toyota store that you left
Oh my God,
pre-pandemic.
nope.
It's two completely different worlds. Like many of
Oh,
the Nissan
like
stores, there's a lot more Nissan stores in that size where they're anywhere from 3 to 8 ish.
yeah,
Especially in Canada, but Toyota stores on average are like 10 plus minimum.
yes, always.
Um, I've worked at a smaller Toyota store, but now that I've had the opportunities that I've had to speak with who I've spoken to in the last 2 years, there's some really big Toyota stores, like
Yeah.
really big Toyota stores.
Yeah.
And it's, even the Hondas, there's lots of big Honda stores. But the biggest is obviously, big three, speaking specifically, a couple of weeks ago, we aired, I have no idea when this is going to air. So contextualize a couple of weeks ago for me recording it. Ed Roberts at Bozard Ford with 362 people in the
Wow.
dealership, like 117 of them, if I'm not mistaken, are in service alone,
Oh
right?
my.
Going from what you and I are used to here in Canada, like 10,
Yeah.
maybe 8 technicians,
Like I had
16 in the large Toyota
4 at
store.
Nissan.
Right. 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 Big difference there. So
Yeah.
what was your experience there? So now that you've made the move, and you're now, presumably, you're starting to really learn, and you're starting to grow mechanically, and so on and so forth at a Nissan store. What would you be your take on the difference between working the two import brands? Like basically the two biggest import brands, two of the three biggest. Like Honda would be the last of those three, in my personal opinion. But now that you've worked at a Toyota store and now you're working at a Nissan store, what would you say is the largest difference between the two?
I would honestly say just like the engineering and manufacturing difference between Toyota and Nissan. Like they're both very well engineered, but to do like rear brakes on the little kicks, so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing, no mechanical, no electronic brakes. It was just very simple. And I found like at
Mm-hmm.
Toyota, it's not just take a caliper off, slap pads on, put it back. It's way
Mm-hmm.
more in depth than that. And every service we did at Toyota was way more in depth as well, just because it's the brand of the name. That's how we do it at Toyota. And yeah, Nissan, like very different learning pace for sure. I would say, like compared to Toyota and Nissan.
Okay. Okay. And now, with that said, does that mean your experience at Nissan, would you say your learning was significantly expedited because of that? Because a lot more things were more simple, at least in your view?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like at Toyota, I understand why they don't want you touching things your first, second year. Like it's a whole machine you're learning about, right? And Toyotas are
Mm-hmm.
very in depth. Like each one's different, but I found a lot of Nissans like they related. Like oh,
Mm-hmm.
this happened on a Pathfinder and working on a Murano. It's kind of the same issues that we're dealing with, and they'd be a lot of the same problems. So yeah, it was quite expedited because you see one issue, okay, well, this car has the same issue, but it's the exact same fix.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting. Interesting. I've never worked specifically at a Nissan brand before, but I've worked on them before, but not enough to associate that this and this and this and this in different models of the same year, or roughly the same year, to associate the similar. But I did find, um, I won't necessarily say that Dodges are as well engineered as Toyotas or Nissans, but at the same time, there's so
it goes
many
up.
model differences. There's so many different models at the time. The last time I turned a professional wrench on a Mopar would have been 2010
Oh wow.
professionally. So in 2010, 2011, 2012, somewhere in there, there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of models, a lot of variations, a lot of everything. And I think that's one of the things that the import brands maybe do a little bit better,
Yeah.
in the fact that they make fewer options for guests to choose,
Yeah.
which makes it a lot simpler in manufacturing, means many things are similar across models,
Mhm.
makes diagnostics a lot easier. Everything's set up similarly
Mhm.
versus having completely different architectures and completely different mindsets and way they build things. Because my goodness, Mopar was never that easy.
No.
Mopar was never. No, I no, no. Now that you've experienced some of the Mopars, I would imagine
Oh
in the time
God.
frames since then, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not the same.
I curse a lot of Mopars now. I see them and I'm like, no, give me a German.
I can't. Well, yes, because then you go to the work on the Germans; it's a completely different animal altogether.
Oh
But
yeah.
one of the things I would describe, going from, either whether you're going from domestic to European or you're going from import to European, I liken it going from Android to Apple. To me,
100%.
the Germans, it feels very intuitive. Like,
Yeah.
it might be complicated. It doesn't matter what you're looking at. It might be complicated, but for some reason it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the best way I can describe the Volkswagens and the Audis, the BMWs and
Yeah.
the
It's
Mercedes
almost like
Benz.
they
They
overcomplicate it so much to the point where it just makes sense.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
you're just reading it and you're like, oh, what? Oh, I get it.
exactly. So, question here: what is, since your start, and now that you've had a couple several years under your belt now, what is the most challenging repair that you've come across, diagnostic or repair?
Hmm. That's a tough one because I was working at a independent shop in Cochrane as well, where he works on a lot of customs, a lot of classics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had an El Camino come in with like a low fuel pressure issue, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's not the same as diagnosing a low fuel pressure issue on a 2012 GMC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally different. So it's like, yeah, I was doing a lot of kind of truck work at that shop and learned a lot about fuel and how the diesels run and was getting really good at that. And then you see an El Camino and it's like low fuel pressure. It's like there's no computer. There's nothing
Uh-huh.
to tell you like where to start, where you should start your diagnostics. So yeah, honestly, like I would say just not so much like repairs, but going from such old cars to such new cars within the same day of work, and you're like your
Mhm.
brain's like was just working on a 69 and now you got to go to a 23. It's like, okay, hold on, switch gears, right? Like I think that was where I found the most difficult, was to switch from that to that.
I can completely understand where your head's at there, because a year and change ago, working at a power sports store, when I would have the first thing in the morning, I rolled it in the night before. I really like to have the motorcycles on my hoist the night before, so that when I came into work in the morning, they were nice, they were warm, everything was, and I
Yeah,
just
ready to
got
go.
them in to work. So the first thing in the morning, I had like a 1974 Honda CB750 on my hoist that I would read the carbs on, and that we're going to pull the carbs apart and put the carbs upstairs in the sonic cleaner. So I've got four carbs apart on my bench, and then taking them up and getting them into the sonic cleaner. And then, because it's a couple hours up there cleaning, whatever, and that's the only thing that we were doing on it, I pull in the next thing that I'm working on. I'm doing a safety, effectively. I'm doing a safety inspection on like a 2019 Ninja ZX6R.
Yeah,
Like like we're not like a year old. We're not talking a model older. We're talking a completely different brand that happens
yeah,
to be 40 years newer,
different
give or take.
generation. Yeah,
Like it's like when they say okay boomer, well, literally speaking, and they're both on my bench essentially at the same time. I ended up having to take apart, I don't quote me on it, I don't think it was a ZX6R, but it was something similar. It was a 63, whatever, but it was like that, where I have an LED assembly on my bench that I'm working on. So trying to figure out what's wrong with it, just disconnected it and put it on my bench, and I'm testing out. And I've got an LED tail lamp on my bench, and I also have carb pieces from a
yeah.
1974 Honda.
It's like
So
two
that
totally different worlds.
completely different worlds. Now the cool thing is, if you think even architecturally, from the early 2000s to 2024, early 2000s when I started in the trade, we were using a DRB3
Yeah,
at Chrysler to diagnose things, like old school, basically BIOS based software program with a OBD plugin.
yeah,
And it's like a couple, it looked like a video game,
yeah,
old school, like a gigantic Game Boy. And
yeah,
now in 20, when I left Chrysler in 2010, we had shifted out of the DRB and into a laptop, and then into what was then called a YTech. So it
yep,
was literally like a portable network router that plugged into the car, and now you're
yeah,
diagnosing from a computer in another room,
yeah,
right? Like, and that's in the span of not even 10 years.
yeah,
That was like an 8-year span.
yeah. Yeah,
So
so there's one day like I'd have to literally go from working on like a 2000 Nissan Pathfinder, like diagnosing,
mhm,
so using that OBD3 or whatever, and we had all these different connections at the shop, and you had to find the right one to plug it into the scan tool to be able to use it, and it's like, okay,
yep.
and then like yeah, 2 hours later go over to do like a OPI on a
Mhm.
2019 Volkswagen from BC. So it's like, I can't do that to my brain that quick.
Yeah, I think these young guys are never going to really understand what the concept of getting a scan tool box and
Yeah.
with a scan tool inside in, let's say, 2003, 2004. And in 2003, 2004, I remember my shop foreman opening up his Modus box. And anybody that knows what a Modus is will know what I'm talking about. There's literally 4 bags of connectors, adapters, and wires
Yeah.
to go
Plugs.
to everything of the sun. And it's literally like, and if some of those folks will remember, there were keys in the DR.
Yes.
So back that far, there was literally little keys. So we think it's funny looking at NVMe cards or whatever where we plug onto the motherboard. There were literally like keys like that to
Yeah.
define what code was going from whatever scan tool you're using to the car,
Yeah. It's like,
plus the adapter.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was a little bit crazy, a little bit overwhelming, but now it's just it's we'll call it simple because now there's
Yeah.
like 160 to 200 modules on the car that we got to communicate with on a
Yeah.
completely different
Not
communication style.
simple, but
Okay,
you have a more simple computer to read that computer with.
yes, so crazy,
Yeah.
crazy. So between then and now, so you've been working at a Toyota, you've been working at a Nissan, you've been working at at an independent.
Mhm.
Um, what thus far, like, would you say you have a favorite of the three, or is it just different, or what would you say your experiences are? Like all of the above. Give us the down low.
Oh, that's hard. I don't think I'd have a favorite. Like, in my personal opinion, I really liked working at the independent shop. Um, I just found it very more like family oriented. Like the guy that owned it, him and his wife started it, and it was open for 25 years. And his son
Mm-hmm.
worked there. His dad helped out. Like it was the customers that have been coming there for 25 years. Plus, now
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing their kids and their kids' kids, right? So that was really cool, seeing like the trust that people had with this shop. Um, in a dealership perspective, you can learn a lot and you can make a lot of money, obviously because you're flat rate, but I don't see them looking at you in the same way as you would at an independent shop. They're almost someone you're like, yeah, you make me a lot of money and you don't have any comebacks. Like, good job. But at this shop it's more so like, how's your like I'd walk in and my boss would be like, what'd you do this weekend? Like how's your boyfriend? How's your mom and dad? Like, he actually like really cares. And to me, like that makes a
Mm-hmm.
huge difference in a workplace.
Mm-hmm. It does, and it's interesting because leadership is always so important to me.
Hmm.
I try to tell everybody the first rule of a mechanic is not to worry about where you work or what brand you work for, but definitely look for your high value leader first, somebody who
Yes.
cares about your well being. And I don't necessarily mean it has to be super cuddly, personable,
No.
whatever, but somebody who is genuinely caring for your well being, your success, not
Yeah.
just today, but tomorrow and every day afterwards, and having that around you during your day
Yeah.
really changes how well you do for not only for yourself but for the business.
Yes, exactly.
So
Like I always
all,
found
all
I would show up earlier at that independent shop that I would at the dealership because I knew that he was going to be there because he was there at 7 every day. And I'd come
Mhm,
in at 7:30 and start helping the girls up front with things. If they needed some cars pulled around, then I'll go grab them or whatever, right? And like he would see that and he would literally come to you and be like, "You have no idea how much that means to me." Like that
mhm.
helps him out way more. And at a dealership, it's like they kind of just expect you to do that. It's like go help out front if you're not busy in the back or whatever, right? And yeah, I just found like he really appreciates what you do, and then therefore you want to work hard and do the best that you can for him.
I think from that standpoint, again, it comes back to leadership, not necessarily the dealership.
Yeah.
Leadership, I've experienced both feeling like a number as well as feeling like I'm cared for and desired, that my presence is wanted and my expertise is needed and
Yeah. Definitely depends on who
valued.
you're answering to every day.
100%. So to that end, I don't necessarily believe that the dealership or the independent's going to be better for one or the other. It just really comes
No.
down to the individual in the leadership role.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I
Of
really
course.
appreciate that. So I guess that comes to me to our question here, Madison. What would be your one piece of advice for a mechanic out there to be happier, healthier, more productive? And the cool thing is, because you are the third female mechanic on here, you might have a completely different outlook than the rest.
Yeah, I'm very curious actually to see what they said about this, like I'm not gonna say like obviously you can't see me, I'm sitting down, but I'm 5'4", 108 pounds. So, when people see me, they're not gonna be like, oh, you can for sure lift a transmission, like
Uh-huh.
but I found like you just have to tell yourself that you can do it. It doesn't matter how hard the job is or what job you're getting. Like, to me, every day I was scared shitless of what job I was going to get because is it going to break my back or am I going to be sitting in a car using diagnostics? Like for guys, they don't think about that. They're like, give me a job. Don't care. I'll go do it. But I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, is this job going to make me sore for the rest of the week? Or, am I going to be sweating my ass off doing this? But either way, like I'd be walking to get the job and it's like, it doesn't matter you're 108 pounds and your arms are sticks. You can still do this. It's not about, you have to tell yourself you can do it, And to me, I found like at the independent shop, there was a lot of times when the guys would get so stressed out at themselves. They're, oh, I lost this bolt, and they're looking for half an hour and they're just losing their mind. And it's like, you know what? Like, but you just put a whole freaking engine back together, dude. Like, you got to step back and look at what you're doing and see it's not
Mm-hmm.
easy. And we do it every day. Like to me, people don't really realize like what we do is hard. We're car doctors. We're car
Yeah.
surgeons, like it's just as stressful. And for us to be doing it every day and coming to work every day and you know what? We're here, we're doing it. Like, I would say you just have to have more faith in yourself.
100%. That faith is going to be my full back piece when I eventually get it, because faith is one of those things, like faith in yourself, faith and belief that you can do something
Yeah.
is so very important. And I think I understand from a pure, now, because I don't understand literally because I've not experienced it, but I can understand how being physically small, 5'4",
Yeah.
100 pounds, you are 8 inches shorter than I am and half my body weight.
Hey, you want to share some of that?
But conceptually, I've never thought that I couldn't do something physically
Right.
because of my size. That's just not something I've ever had to cope with ever.
Right.
I'm fortunate enough that I am like the perfect size for almost every car on the planet. I fit in it, and I usually don't have to move the seat.
Oh,
Everything is exactly to my hand, to my body proportions in
yeah.
every possible.
You're
I
an
don't think I've
average
ever
size.
felt. I'm average size in almost every possible human conceivable way, which means I just fit.
Yeah. Just
So
work.
said, that said, I've never gotten this like, am I going to be able to put the clutch in?
Yeah.
Am I too short to put the clutch in? That's never something that's entered my mind. Am I
Right.
going to be able to lift this thing? Has never entered, like, just because it's either I'm going to lift it or I need the engine crane.
Right.
Basically, that's it.
Yeah. And I
Um,
usually, before I even get a job, I'm like, what tools are free that I can use? What jacks are free? What cranes are free? Before I even like pick a job, I have to see like, because I'm not going to be going and bugging the guy next to me like, hey, help me. Like they're doing their own stuff, and you're not an apprentice anymore. You got to do it on your own. You can't be a baby your whole life. You got to step it up and figure it out. But it's always work smarter, not harder.
well, I always caveat because I literally tattooed it on myself.
Yes.
You got to work hard before you can work smart, because
Yeah.
you got to learn you got to make all the mistakes to learn what the right path is so you can work smart.
100%.
Some of us just take a whole lot longer to figure it out.
Yeah, I had to learn real quick because otherwise I'm not doing my job. So, but
Fair.
I always found like
Fair.
actually Richard taught me this. There's always a way, there's always an easier way to do it than you think. Right? So he like if I was struggling with something, he would come over and
Ooh.
he'd be like, why are you taking so long for this? And I'm like, I can't figure out how, like, I can't figure out how to get it off, you know? And he would just take a step back and he'd be like, how many ways can you think of to get it off? You know, okay, well, you just found out 5 ways. How many ways have you tried? 2, 3? Okay, go try the other ways. You know, like he always like it's always a good to have a different perspective on something as well if you're struggling.
Mm. Richard Mueller is very good at that.
Yeah,
The being able to either visualize or talk through a series of problems
yeah,
and be able to come up with all of the different ways that you can solve it and figuring out which one is the best way to solve it and then getting it done
yeah,
in an expeditious manner. He's very good at that. So
yeah. Like he
yeah.
always just seems to know, like, okay, I have 5 ways to do this. What way's the best? You know, what can I do right now? Like he was
Mhm.
just very efficient with that, and he definitely taught me that way. Like instead of standing there struggling with this, trying to reef on this bolt or whatever you're trying to get off, like take a step back. What else can I do? You know, like stop wasting time.
Mhm. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good piece of advice. Very good piece of advice. Thank you for sharing that. I
Yep.
really do. Madison, I think that's a great portion to end there. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Of course.
All right, so folks, I think we're gonna pop off right there because I think there's a lot more nuggets in there than I can think. Between some of the stories, between some of the experiences, I think that's a great way to end. That the fact that you've spent the time going through COVID, you've gotten your license through all of that, you've had time both independent and dealer, you've got a bit of experience and what this that whatever the case may be, that's awesome.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
fact that you've
Honestly.
been able to accomplish that through the last 5 years is awesome, and I'm really thankful and really proud that you were able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah. Honestly, though, like as much as it is me working hard and being hard on myself, like I had some unreal people working above me. Like there was so many times where I'm just like, I can't do this. You know, I'm giving up. That's enough for me. And you know, and then Richard or my foreman Steve, like, you know, you have to really appreciate those people because you don't get them very often. So I would one other piece of advice for your techs, don't take
Mm-hmm.
them for granted. You know, like every day when you walk out, you shake your foreman's hand. If they helped you, like I really appreciate what you did for me today because that will go miles. You know, like just makes such a difference, you know, treating each other with respect and appreciating what each other do for sure.
100%. 100%.
Hmm.
I I kind of left me speechless there. I don't know what to follow up that with.
I know, like honestly, a lot of when I left my independent shop, I'm not there anymore. I'm at a customs shop now. But when I left there, he one of the things he asked me, he's like, "Is there something that we could have done differently?" And I said, "No. Like you guys showed me appreciation for everything I did, and if I screwed up, you know, it wasn't getting mad. It was talking to me with respect." And I said, like, I didn't have that for the whole 4 years of my career before this. I said it makes such a difference to come to work and actually be appreciative and then appreciate them back, you know?
Mm-hmm. That it was. I heard it. I probably heard it before, but the fact that my current boss says it all of the time is the attitude of gratitude.
Hmm.
Russell Hill is amazing for that, and he really instills how much appreciation and how far appreciation can take you. So
Yeah.
being able to have that reciprocity between leadership and yourself is really awesome.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, folks, I think that's the end of today's episode. But don't worry, folks, we don't have to go oh no's because we'll have another one coming next week. I've already got them booked. It's already locked and loaded, so we good to go that way. Folks, don't forget that Wrench Turners has merch. The link will be in the little description below. And remember that my mother says it's awesome, so you should buy
Mom's
it.
always right.
Mom's always right. Wrenches to Wrenches newsletter continues to come out bi-weekly. I am now digging from the archives, so every once in a while you're going to see stuff that I wrote about like a year and a half, 2 years ago is now going to be populated out in the wild again for y'all to read. It's really interesting to see some of that writing. Some of it I have not edited any of it. It's literally just reposting it, so I get to see my own mistakes. So y'all get to see it too. And to end as we always do with a quote. Remember that tomorrow, the best preparation for tomorrow is the hard work you do today.
I like that.
Folks, remember that negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.